Good morning. Good morning, good morning. Happy Monday, snowy morning in West Michigan. So glad to have you all with us this morning as we have our breakfast with the Congressman this morning. My name is Jody Ozarski. I have the immense privilege of being on the team at the West Coast Chamber and thrilled to have you join us today. Whether you're here in person or joining us virtually, welcome. Of course, we could not do what we do without having a number of sponsors, and today we have several. If you check out the screen right now, the silver sponsors for today are listed. Would you please join me in thanking those silver sponsors? We also have 4 gold sponsors today: First National Bank, Macatawa Bank, Request Foods, and Tierra Yachts. Thank you to our gold sponsors. And then we have our friends at Blue Cross who sponsor all of our advocacy events and are just a tremendous partner for us at the West Coast Chamber. Will you join me in thanking our friends at Blue Cross? Today we also have a program sponsor, and that's Corewell Health, and I am joined by my festive friend Bill Hofer this morning. Bill is the president of Zeeland and regional leader of Corewell Health Hospitals. Bill, welcome.
Good morning, Jody.
So glad to have you with us. Bill and I do this every once in a while. I love being able to spend time. It seems like we only get to talk to each other when we sit up here, so this is delightful. Thanks for joining us in our catch-up this morning. So, Bill, hospitals across Michigan in the news lately for their safety and quality ratings. What do you got for me from Zeeland Hospital?
Yeah. First, actually, I'd love to thank the Chamber. In my career, I've been able to live in 2 other communities, actually much larger communities, St. Louis and Virginia Beach. And actually, our Chamber and the engagement of this type here in West Michigan is far better than anywhere I've ever been. So I think, Jody,
thank you.
You all do a great job.
Oh, thank you.
And just are very worthy of all the recognition that you've gotten this past year. So
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. So actually, Zeeland Hospital fared really, really well in recent safety ratings. Zeeland Hospital was A-rated for the 19th time this past fall. And I can't guarantee that I'm correct, but I'm pretty sure I'm correct. I think we may be the longest A-rated hospital in the state of Michigan. And we're just really, really excited about that.
That's a big deal. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
So tell me, how does that happen?
So this is actually the favorite part of my job, is when I get to recognize people.
Okay.
I think that happens because we've got great people, and I actually got to invite some of them this morning to our breakfast. People like Melissa Dykman, who's a quality specialist at Zeeland Hospital, Amanda Goosen, who is our director at the hospital, Bernie Jor, who's our chief operating officer, Jennifer, who helps us hire and train great people. But truly these, and also Dr. Ethan Moracle, I almost forgot Dr. Moracle, wonderful people, and it's really people in any business that make things happen. And we're just very blessed to have such a great team.
Well done, Jennifer. You're hiring a great team, and that is the core, right, to that success. So tell me, as you look forward, 2026, right around the corner, what are some of the goals that you've set here for Zeeland Hospital?
Yeah, honestly, I've said these things here before, and we're really just going to stay the course, which is 2 things. One is we're working really hard to keep care local. There continues to be a large outmigration of people from the Lakeshore, largely to Grand Rapids for care, and we're very focused on trying to make local care possible. 2 examples of that. We've got a new urologist who is going to be living in Ottawa County and working almost exclusively at Zeeland Hospital, Dr. Benzik. Also, Dr. Nestor, he's a sports medicine doctor, will be living here in Ottawa County and working mostly at Zeeland Hospital. And also our medical group as a larger organization is very focused on helping our doctors in Grand Rapids come to where the patients live instead of having patients come to them. So the medical group is actively working to get these providers time in our facilities so people can stay close to home when they need care.
I love that. You know, as a Chamber of Commerce, a big part of attracting and retaining talent here in our community is access to quality health care. And so we are so fortunate to have you and your team providing just that here for us. Will you join me in thanking Bill and the team? Thanks, Bill. Okay, so we want to make sure that our time together is absolutely focused in delivering to you what you came here for. And so before we get started, we're going to give you the opportunity to do some live voting right here, which will focus the conversation today between our facilitator and the Congressman. So if you take a moment to pull out your phone, grab that QR code on the screen. And then you'll see that you need to enter a code. It's 81704676. It's on the screen, so you don't have to remember what I just said. And then what you're going to find is a list of topics that you can stack rank in terms of what you hope the Congressman covers first. And so Mike will take those into consideration as they start going through those conversations together. So while you're completing that, I'm going to welcome to the stage today's MC, the founder of Total Control Health Plans. I never use your title, I realize. The founder of Total Control Health Plans, Mike Hill, and our U.S. Congressman representing the 4th District, Congressman Bill Huizenga. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Jody. Well, Congressman, here we are again.
Michael.
You may not be on.
Michael? There we go. All right.
Right.
Your Excellency is usually, I should have addressed you.
This is always a highlight for me. It gives me an opportunity to dust off my Hope College poli-sci degree and get an update from what's going on in Washington. So really eager to spend some time with you. We have a lot of things we got to talk about, and inflation, taxes, and debt are going to be one of the things that we're going to start with. But before we do that, I want to just...
That's an interesting grouping. Yes.
That's right. Turn it over to you and get us caught up. Since we met last a year ago, what's changed? What's new? What have you accomplished?
I just feel like I got asked to describe, what kind of animals are on the African continent? It's like, where do you want to start, right? Personally, we're all doing great. Natalie and I are empty nesters. You can always tell the empty nest. Oh, sorry, the youngest is still here. Yeah. Yeah, maybe I need to start there. First and foremost, everybody please welcome my wonderful, vivacious wife, Natalie. And then our youngest son, Seeger, over here. You can stand up, too. Stand up. Seeger's repping for the rest of the kids. He's a sophomore at Kelvin College, the other school that way. There we go. Yes, and 7-3 in the football this year. We won't bring up a specific game that happened, but it's been great watching our kids launch into their professional lives. And Will is going into law enforcement. We've got a couple of kids in media, a couple of kids that are doing government work. And it's really been fun to do that. No grandkids yet, but so if you're on the list, by the way, who gets our Christmas card? All right. Well, if anyone else wants the Christmas card, you'll be able to watch our family grow over the years. So it's a fun one. We're professionally, this has been a bit of a challenge this past year. 43-day shutdown was not helpful, obviously, and this might get into some of our, so I'm not trying to jump ahead of all of the issues here, but I do see governance and the shutdown as number 6, so let me just touch on that. We actually got a significant amount done if you look in the 6 months between the president's swearing in and him signing the working families tax cuts, the one big beautiful bill, into law at the White House on July 4. That was a significant lift This was an expiration of all the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act provisions. It would have been a massive increase for families in taxation, for small businesses, especially those LLC pass-throughs, subchapter S, that kind of thing. It would have been huge, a huge burden that was going on. That would have been put on and put back on really small business. And I'm very proud of what that has done. As a small business owner myself, I have a perspective of what that means. In general, let me maybe touch on this because this will probably get to number 2 and a couple of the other things. I'm vice chair of the Financial Services Committee. Here was one big thing. As we were sitting here a year ago, right about this time, I was in and making a presentation to become chairman of the Financial Services Committee. I did not get chosen. We have a phenomenal guy, French Hill is his name, who is our chair. And French is a small community banker from Arkansas, but also had worked in Treasury and all those things. But I'm vice chair of the committee, so that has kept me at the table and involved and engaged in everything from crypto to this past week where we had something called the Invest Act, which is really about creating the atmosphere for our capital markets to thrive here in the United States. We're very different than Europe and other places around the world. We need to maintain that uniqueness. Why? Because that means then companies like yours will have access to that capital. And we've seen some pretty dramatic changes. We are now literally at less than half of where we had been with publicly traded companies in this country. And this is kind of a trick question, but how many companies are in the, we've heard about the S&P and all these other things, right? How many companies are there in the Wilshire 5,000? Feels like a little bit of a, who's buried in Grant's tomb kind of a question, right? Yeah. I saw somebody say, well, 5,000. Wrong. We do not even have 5,000 publicly traded companies here in the United States anymore. And Wall Street Journal just had an article last night about how there's basically a stock market for the uber wealthy. These are the folks who are the beyond just the accredited investor. These are the people who are able to put in 7, if not 8, if not 9 figures into all of these privately held companies. And these privately held companies, which used to be referred to as unicorns, if you hit $1 billion in valuation and were privately held, you were viewed as a unicorn because nobody does that. If you're going to grow your business, then you turn it into a publicly traded business. Well, guess what? There's a whole herd of these unicorns out there now. Why? Because we have put regulation upon regulation upon regulation for publicly traded companies, and there's barrier after barrier for going public, staying public. If you're a smaller publicly traded company, you really have to question about whether that is a proper use for all of the limited resources you have. And so what it's doing is it's locking out people who, with their 401k or their retirement system or even the union retirement system, they're not able to access these potentially rapidly growing companies because they're not publicly traded. And so that was a huge thing that we were working on. I also, since last year, have been named subcommittee chairman on foreign affairs. It's South Central Asia, which is India to Bangladesh, Bhutan and Nepal, and then all of the stands, Afghanistan, Pakistan, all the way up to Kazakhstan. And in addition to, so when India and Pakistan had their dust up, shall we call it, I had a parade of ambassadors and others kind of coming through the office. It's a fascinating segment of the world. It's a part of the world where a lot of the rare earths are located. Kazakhstan, everything from oil to cobalt to a number of other things that are there. Same thing with Uzbekistan and others in that area. And it's kind of a crucial section of the world, sandwiched between China. Then, of course, we have Iran in the Middle East. Pakistan is obviously active. Afghanistan has been a big part of our more recent history as well here in the States. So that's been very active, but an even more interesting, certainly as interesting part of that, we did a rewrite of the State Department. Reauthorization is what it's called, is what we would say. And what that means is the last time this had happened was in 2002. Think about that. 2002, it was post 9/11. And it was the last time that Congress went through and really evaluated all of the various programs of the State Department. And we decided to do that, and it was a huge monumental undertaking. And we've all seen the headlines about all the very controversial stuff, you know, these drag shows in Ecuador and all the other stuff that had been literally getting funded by your tax dollars, by the way. And some of the other more positive things. So, for example, I oversee the Peace Corps, the Food for Peace program, all of the communications that the State Department does, Voice of America and Radio Free Europe and all the other stuff. That all falls under my bailiwick. In addition to that, I have been given into my portfolio something called BIS. It's the Bureau of Industry and Security. It runs through the Commerce Department, technically. But BIS is in charge of figuring out who's going to get export licenses. And we also deal with that on the Financial Services Committee. So I've had some familiarity with this, with sanctions and things like that. The crux of it that we're dealing with right now is on chips and AI and what the computing power that is going on. So as we are having news break about where NVIDIA is or where TSMC in Taiwan, where the Dutch company, ASML, all of the manufacturing of those chips, plus where those chips are going, I really, really do think will influence and affect our standing as a nation here in the next coming decades. And it's coming quick, folks. Anyone in any kind of financial services, you know, AI is a part of what you're doing. You're in the media. AI is what part of this. Virtually every company is touching, whether they really know it and have a formalized program for it or not. AI is going to be one of those innovative, tough, scary things that we are going to have to be dealing with as a country. So that's been a lot of my focus as well. So I'm finding myself in a SCIF, which is one of those secure locations where I get to get shared and get, quite honestly, the crap scared out of me on a regular basis about what is going on. That's a technical term in DC, by the way. I wasn't going to use the real technical term in DC, but there's some really, really tough stuff that we are dealing with when it comes to our standing as a nation and what the future is going to look like.
So just to build off of your conversation on AI, Trump administration is really pushing for the federal government to start setting some standards and some regulations rather than letting it happen at the state level, where states are starting to take action and trying to regulate AI. And if we have 50 different definitions of what is and is not, it might make it challenging to be the world leader on that topic. So can you give us a preview of coming attractions? Do you anticipate something going to happen at the federal level?
I do, and we have to kind of separate these things out, right? I mean, we've all seen the deep fakes. We've all seen sort of the identity captures, and that I think there's more consensus on, where you've got people saying, no, that's wrong. We don't want to see that, and that's a little different when you have a state regulation based on that versus a state picket, whoever you want, that somebody that might be quote unquote forward thinking like California, or another state that may be less so, trying to shape what you can and can't do with AI when it comes to financial services, you know, in banking, for example. Or in real estate. You know, that's my background, is real estate, developing, that kind of thing. And there's a fine line between innovation and making sure that there's efficiencies built in, and then sort of all the annoying stuff that my kids show me on X or Instagram and, all the other things. Not that you're annoying, Seer. It's just that, apparently we haven't had enough coffee here. It's just, that's the kind of struggle that we are having, is like, what is the relevance and the safety and security part of this? That's the danger that we have. What about your publicly, your PII, your personal identification information, which is private? What is being done with that? How does AI utilize that? And let's make sure it's not getting exploitative. But much like a number of other issues, I think this falls under the Constitutional Commerce Clause, where we've got to have a federal standard that then is relevant to all of the states, so that we don't have essentially a state embargoing or blocking another state or another person's activity from one state to another. So that's kind of the fine line that we're trying to weave our way through on that. But I do expect that there will be some federal legislation.
So the audience's number one topic they wanted us to touch on was inflation, taxes, debt. We have had this conversation on debt before. We know where you stand. I think you know where the audience generally stands on that particular topic. There are folks, depending upon how you feel about one big, beautiful bill, will say that it did a lot to help reduce deficit and debt. Others will say it did the exact opposite. Question for you is, that bill is over and done with now, and so we're heading into an election year. Do you think there's going to be any meaningful movement on debt and deficit in 2026?
That's one of the things we're pushing on, and if anybody listens to WHTC in the mornings, I do every Thursday morning, typically about 8:15. Last couple of weeks I've had to do it at 7:15. By the way, that really annoys the people that are apparently self-monitoring me, because they don't know when they can try to catch me in some sort of fold of reality. But anyway, the reason why I've had to do it the last couple of weeks is because we've been having some meetings with this bipartisan group that we named the BFF, Bipartisan Fiscal Forum. Yes, we chose BFF on purpose. It's an equal number of Republicans and Democrats. Scott Peters from California is my co-chair on that. And just to take you back a year plus ago, we had a fiscal debt commission bill that was debated and actually passed the budget committee. We were hopeful that we were going to be able to get it into a piece of legislation that would have set up a bicameral, bipartisan commission that would be reviewing all of the debt of the United States and come in with a recommendation that would have to be given a up or down vote in both the House and the Senate, unamendable. We thought we were making real progress with the Biden administration. That became a political football at the White House. Very quickly followed on by that, a few folks on the right weighed in that this is, just purely a tax increase vehicle. I don't think that is the case. I think we need to be honest and open about where we're sitting with our debt as a nation. I mean, we're at $38 trillion in debt right now. And interest on the debt now exceeds all of our defense spending. It exceeds all of our domestic spending. That is not healthy, folks. And we've got to have the courage to be able to do something about that and to have an honest conversation about that. So from that standpoint, in fact, last week, I sat down with the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, to discuss sort of what our BFF group is doing and plans, and he is interested in trying to address it. I don't know whether we're going to be able to do this before the election or after the election, or frankly, whether we're going to be able to do it at all. AARP is opposed for some reason. I have no idea why, other than they think that that somehow this vehicle is going to be a cut to Social Security. Here's what we do know. there is a cut to those programs coming, not because of anything that I'm doing or a piece of legislation or anything that a commission will be doing, but because the law says once this trust fund runs out of money, there is going to be a reduction in those benefits. And if we do nothing, within 8 years, there's going to be nearly a 25% cut to Social Security payments. All right? We all know people who are either in it or soon to be in it, who will be getting a significant impact. Think about that. You're going from $2,000 a month to $1,500 a month. How is that morally okay? And yet we've got some of my colleagues who are, I don't know if they're debt deniers or what exactly, but they're really kind of like, we'll be fine. Literally, one guy who I've got respect for said, we've got 8 years to deal with this. Have you noticed how Washington works? I mean, that is, if we're not doing something right now, I'm afraid that the closer we're at, the more significant the problem will be, the more difficult the solution will be, and it probably won't be as well thought out. So that's huge. Inflation. We had hit 9%, 9.1 under the Biden administration. We're at significantly below that. Even if you take the entire 4 years of what had gone on, we're at half of that. That doesn't mean we don't have more work to do. It is still painful to go to the grocery store. It's getting less painful to go to the gas station, but that's still significant. We know that affordability is not just a watchword, it's a real thing that we've got constituents and everybody here, I don't care whether you're a small business person or just sitting around your kitchen table trying to figure out how the checkbook's going to balance. We've got work to do on that. So to me, that is making sure that we have an economy that is vibrant. It's having an energy policy that makes sense. It's making sure that there's a tax policy that benefits working men and women, not penalizes them, and creates that entrepreneurial atmosphere. That's how we then hold our standing in the U.S.
One final question on the inflation, tax, and debt. One of the key levers that the federal government has to pull is interest rates, and set by the Fed, which is historically an apolitical organization. President
Ish.
Have a new Fed chair slated to be named in 2026. What is your take on what sort of feedback the Fed should take from whoever the president happens to be, or should it strive to continue to be fully as independent as possible?
Well, let's debunk the whole notion that it's fully and completely independent. All right. I mean, that it never has been. That having said that, there is certainly an effort that needs to be made to keep it as insulated from the political decisions as possible. But it's impossible to not have some type of influence and effect. I mean, these are people that read the news as well, right? They know what's happening. I would say that, and I've said this to him privately. I have said this to him in hearings. This one of the interesting things about this job is I get to sit down with people like Jay Powell, who, by the way, is familiar with Holland, has been to Holland. The company he was with in New York helped orchestrate and put together the Brooks Beverage deal back in the day. He knows my family's in construction. He's asking me about the economy here in West Michigan all the time and what's happening in Michigan more writ large. So when you're giving that feedback to me and to my team, it actually filters its way into some pretty important places. So I appreciate that. But I've said this to him privately and publicly in hearings. I think the Fed was late. The Fed was late going into this. They've been late coming out of it. We've got spottiness within the economy, depending on both regionally as well as sector, what you are experiencing, and we do know that this is all tied into quantitative easing and quantitative tightening and the borrowing that the Fed has done, and what has sort of defied some economists over the last number of years is what they thought were the classic rules of the economy seemingly have been set aside. We had artificially low interest rates for an extended period of time and didn't see inflation. There was a small increase in interest rates, but we saw a massive increase in inflation. That really had more to do with supply chain, energy policy, and in fact, I had Powell confirm this in a hearing publicly. Our federal spending is what accounted for somewhere around 40% of all the inflation that we saw, was just simply how much money was sloshing around because of what the federal government had done in COVID and during COVID. And then all of the people fighting as we're trying to rein that back in. So I think those interest rates do need to continue to come down. I think that it should be a main goal. I think the Fed has some restructuring that needs to happen. Why is it that New York automatically gets a seat, but if you are the St. Louis Fed or the Richmond Fed or even out west or Chicago, you're on a rotational basis? Well, it's because in the past, New York was the center. Now, how many people have moved their companies down to Miami now? How many people are down in a lot of other places? We've decentralized a lot of decision-making in business, including the government and the economy writ large. We ought to be doing that same thing. So I've had some legislation that would reconfigure that a little bit. But yes, there's a certain element of independence that the Fed is properly to have, but then they need to exercise it.
Shifting gears, you referenced spending time in the skiff and hearing things that you can't tell us, but maybe you can give us a preview of coming attractions as you see it today. And what I mean by that is, we understand that there's the big things going on. There's the Ukraine war, there's the back and forth with China and so on. But what do you see that we're not currently really talking about that could be a topic that a year from now we'll be revisiting and say, you were right, we didn't see that one coming, or you saw that one coming?
Yeah, and I'll make this kind of hyper-local in a way. Nigeria, all right? I'm a member of the CRC Church. Natalie and I went to Calvin with kids from Nigeria. Either they were missionary kids or they were from Nigeria. And you look at the political violence that is happening in Nigeria, it has the danger of becoming the next Rwanda. And in fact, I'm going to be going to Nigeria. There was just a delegation that was there. I'm doing a very quick turnaround, but it's important enough that Nigeria's leaders understand that we are watching. Nigeria is the largest economy in Africa, West Africa, second largest behind South Africa. They are resource rich. There's a number of these positives that are there, but the radical jihadist movement there is targeting Christians and moderate Muslims. And in my opinion, and I've said this publicly and privately, that the Tinubu government hasn't done enough. And I just don't want to see that in retrospect, us looking as an international community, looking back and saying, why did we let that happen? I think a success story is you look at the number of conflicts that the president has been able to address. The DRC, the Republic of Congo, and Rwanda, that conflict. There's others in Southeast Asia, others in other parts of Africa. Not to mention then, Ukraine, Gaza, a number of the other conflicts that are around. Those are still hot spots. What we are seeing is a continual aggressiveness by China. I'm choosing my words here. I'm measuring twice and cutting once. They are our adversaries. Their continued aggressiveness in places like the South China Sea, which now they've got submarines ending up west of India, all right, off the African coast. That's not typically their area of operation, but they are continuing to expand their influence around the world, in South America, Africa. They are trying to get warm water ports in the west side of Latin America into the Pacific, but they are also going onto the east side of the Latin America and South America, as well as the west side of Africa. Why? Because they also want to be a player in the Atlantic. They're, not to mention then, that's the military side. You look at, and a lot of these things blend for them. Their military goals and their economic goals oftentimes really coexist. And that's where we get into AI and into chips and into what they have been doing, trying to really put a preeminence on their own manufacturing rather than being dependent on a number of other countries and companies that are not Chinese. So that is something that not much keeps me up at night, but when I do pop awake, that is certainly something that gets my attention.
Thank you. Shifting gears to healthcare costs and reforms. So the primary driver, one of the key drivers of the government shutdown was continuation of COVID era extension of ACA subsidies for health insurance. The commitment made by the Republican side to reopen the government was that was going to be a topic that was going to come up, and there's been some attempts recently on addressing that. Where do you see the subsidies going? And that's one part of the conversation, but it isn't really the underlying issue. Healthcare costs continue to go up at a massive rate. The Speaker of the Michigan House is thinking that in early 2026, the state of Michigan might need to start regulating hospital prices, for example. And so can you talk to what we're going to see about the subsidies? That's a very hot now topic, but also what's driving healthcare costs and what can the federal government do?
Well, and as you well know, and frankly, probably most of you all know, these are two different things, right? That general increase that we have seen in healthcare costs has continued to rise seemingly unchecked. By the way, the Affordable Care Act was supposed to stop that and was supposed to address that. Many of us warned when the ACA/Obamacare was put in place that it wasn't going to meet those objectives. All of that has seemingly been the only response is, well, I guess we need to just throw more subsidies and more money at it. I'm afraid that patients have been cut out of the equation. That is a massive problem. Now, these are just numbers, right? We have to put the faces and the people behind the numbers, but we have to know what those numbers are. 7% is who we are talking about with these additional COVID era additional subsidies. The 7% of people that are involved in the healthcare system. What about the other 93%? And I think that's kind of what you're getting at is what are we going to do more broadly about healthcare? Yes, there is a focus right now on these additional subsidies that were put in place temporarily, by the way, with no Republican votes, but temporarily put in place by the Democrats in the COVID era, which seemingly they're kind of coming and screaming at people like me saying, "What's your solution?" And it's like, well, what were you planning on doing? You're the ones that put this termination date in place, and you had no plan, no discussion. By the way, I quite honestly kind of reject the premise that that was the reason for the 43-day shutdown. Chuck Schumer needed to have a shutdown politically, and then, oh, by the way, they backfilled it in with some issues, and this happened to be one of those that fit nicely into it. And that damage that was done in those 43 days is probably not fully understood by everyone on how far it set us back. I mean, just think of the perspective here. You know, Donald Trump's inaugurated January 20. By July 4, we are signing the working families tax cut into existence, plus a number of other things that were happening. August is traditionally the time when Congress is out. September, we were working towards resolution on the funding. We had passed a number of bills in the House, including a continuing resolution. It got shut down for 43 days. I mean, that is It's about 20% of all of the working time that we had so far this year. Plus, you look at what it has meant for the second half of the year. It has had a significant impact, and we are now having to go back in and sort of fill that in. So healthcare has to be addressed writ large. There will need to be some sort of transition here, in my opinion, because frankly, people were not prepared for this temporary additional subsidy to be expiring. That does nothing, by the way, that touches the original subsidies that were a part of the ACA Obamacare. Those will still stay in place. This is just an additional kicker that has been put on. So early this morning, I was reviewing an email that I had gotten. I don't know what's going to happen. I thought I knew what I was walking into this week and some of the things that we were going to be voting on. The pharmacy benefits managers, PBMs, being able to sell healthcare plans across state lines, having small businesses and groups like chambers come together and provide a centralized purchasing power for their members. Those were some of the things, by the way, that we had in the One Big Beautiful Bill that the Senate parliamentarian knocked out. OMB, Office of Management and Budget, said that would have been a 12+% savings on healthcare costs. 12%. Who would not like to have a 12% reduction rather than the increases that we're seeing? And so we're going to be trying to push those policies back in place because we have to deal with healthcare as a nation.
While we're on the topic of the shutdown, just briefly, can you touch on the piece of legislation, the bipartisan legislation, no budget, no pay, or something to that effect, and maybe help us understand why that didn't get more traction or hasn't gotten more traction?
Yeah, it did get some traction. This, to remind everybody, this is going on. I came up with a piece of legislation, bipartisan actually, with my friend Scott Peters from BFF. Clearly, Congress writ large needs more pressure on it. And I thought, and Scott and I thought, this would be a maybe not the most elegant way of doing it, but one to get everybody's attention. If we can't do our basic constitutional job of passing a budget and passing the spending bills before September 30, then we shouldn't be paid. To me, this makes sense, right? And trust me, in the 15 years I've been here, I haven't had a pay raise. That's okay. I can't claim. I'm not crying here about that. There are a lot of folks in Congress that quote unquote don't need their pay. And I don't want us to be in that spot either, because that's a distortion, right, of what the American people are really about. But it just seems like this is such a basic function of what we need to do. And the legislation would say you don't get paid, you can't get paid retroactively, so we're not playing all these shell games with our paychecks. And I hope that would focus in the attention of Congress. So there's discussion about where that could get inserted into other packages as we're moving forward.
Shifting gears now then to business and financial regulation, certainly something that you know quite well. The Trump administration has been advocating for loosening some of the Dodd reforms on banks, and there was just an article not that long ago about the impact that community banks are having in Michigan and driving the economy forward. So can you talk a little bit about some of the reforms that you anticipate coming in terms of bank reform specifically and what that would mean for the economy?
Yeah, and when we say bank, we mean bank and credit unions, even though they're regulated very differently. By the way, this is probably the most ecumenical bipartisan thing that you will be a part of in the next week. You are sitting in a room where both the banks and the credit unions are being represented, and we haven't had a rumble yet. So all the bank and credit union people are chuckling. Everybody else is confused, but. It is a hot topic, and I actually had a little brief conversation up here with one of our local bank folks. And you look at where banking regulation, both out of Dodd-Frank and the actions since then, it has been about gold plating upon the gold plating of the regulations. And we need to have a safe and sound banking system. Must be. Number one, has to happen. The question is, have we made it so ironclad that we are now locking people out of an ability to use the banking system? And small businesses, it's when you've got regulators coming in and having the ability to say, we don't particularly like that industry that you are in, and we think you're a little too weighted in it, so you can't give those loans. They may not say that last part, but they'll be like, that's probably a bad idea, isn't it? And I'm the bank board or I'm the bank CEO, and it's like, well, Mr. and Mrs. Regulator, I guess maybe that does sound like a terrible idea. There's example upon example. My own family has one when and this is not a swipe at anybody, the local bank that we had been using for 3 generations and had bankrolled a couple of our real estate development deals, decided that our 24-unit condominium project was no longer fitting within their profile of what they could do for lending because of what the regulators were saying. We had to go find another local community bank, which we were very happy with. And then they got acquired. And then we were still pretty happy. And then they got acquired. And we were still pretty happy. And then they were acquired by the original bank who had denied us and who still wanted us off their books. Okay? Well, good thing that we were far enough along in this project that we were able to work with them to get out of that remainder of our loan. But I'm just kind of curious what I would have done had, and by the way, this is in the middle of COVID, where my options were kind of limited about where I was going to be able to go with this. It's that kind of thing where when you've got Basel and the Basel III, what's referred to as the Basel III endgame, dictating what local community banks are going to be doing, that's a problem. Now, we've taken away a lot of the decision making at a local level, and that's everything from mortgages to business loans, you name it. And some of that is more efficient, some of that is more detached, and that is problematic in my mind. So we've got to make sure that we have a banking system that functions for not just the regulators, but it actually functions for those that need the banking system. And we have definitely gotten away from that. We are over the last number of years, but we are pushing back and coming back, I think, to the center of that, and we will be a little different than the Europeans, which I'm completely fine with. Our banking system is different than the European banking system, as is our capital markets programs, and the access to capital is just done very differently in Europe than in the United States. And I would also note that that's why Europe has somewhere around a 1.8 economic advancement every year, because they have handcuffed themselves with so much regulation.
So I'm going to combine 2 topics here, the business and financial regulation along with energy and infrastructure. You touched on AI for us.
Holy smokes, we might get through all 8 of these things. All right.
There may be a record set here. So you mentioned AI, and Michigan is a state that's being recognized in the Great Lakes region in particular as an area for these AI data centers, which takes enormous amounts of energy.
Massive amounts of energy.
So talk to us a little bit about deregulation or regulations that need to be changed so that we can meet the energy requirements of the future. If we take a look at the rate at which China's bringing nuclear power plants online, coal-fired power plants online, and otherwise, we're way behind, and solar for that matter as well. So can you talk a little bit about what you think the federal government should do to stimulate development of energy resources?
Yeah, and it's two sides of the same coin. You've got the federal side of this, but you also have the state side of this. And we've been living this here in West Michigan, frankly, with both the Campbell plant and Palisades. And I will tell you, I think the motivation for keeping the Campbell plant open from the administration is that we do not have enough energy. And I sat for 6 years on the Energy and Technology Committee when I was in the state legislature. I was vice chair of that committee as well for a period of time, looking at alternatives. Yes, alternatives exist: wind, solar, number of other things. It's not enough. It just is simply not enough to meet our base load. I had a robust conversation with both of the main incumbent energy providers here in the state of Michigan over an extended period of time, where I still don't understand how we could simply just cut off, and they actually moved up their time frames of getting rid of all coal-fired and fossil-fired energy. Well, natural gas at a minimum has to be part of this equation. As you were saying, China has continued to add these coal-fired power plants at a dizzying rate with, by the way, horrible pollution records. And because I would argue, in many ways, as much political pressure as much as policy pressure, our incumbent energy providers were shutting down places like Campbell. And so that's one part of that. We're never going to get back to where we had been with coal-fired production, but I think this has to be viewed as what is the bridge. And I know this isn't necessarily always a popular view or a popular discussion to have, but we've got a responsibility here to make sure that people are able to turn the lights on. And by the way, have you be able to continue to expand your businesses if you're interested in doing that, which I hope you are. Palisades is another example, though, of we have to think creatively and differently. And I'm thankful that between both the Biden administration and now the Trump administration, there's been a $1.5 billion commitment to Palisades. It's the first nuclear facility that has gone cold, rods out, nothing left in there, to then be back operational. It just was declared operational again about a month ago. And they will be getting energy back on the grid sometime in the not too distant future. The thing that makes complete sense to me is here we have a site that doesn't need permitting because it's already there. It's a site that doesn't need infrastructure because everything from the security to the transmission is already there. And we have this equation here in the U.S. where we need to have, and specifically Michigan, as a peninsula state, we've got limited ways that electricity is going to come into our state. This makes sense that we have to have some of this operating within the confines of Michigan. Even though it goes into the MISO, even though it goes into this whole regional system, we need to be a producer, not just a taker of that energy. I think that is going to be key. Now, getting into specifically these data centers, huge amounts of energy get absorbed into this. And this is where the state has a role in this. EPA can green light stuff, right? That can be done. But if you don't have Eagle and the state also playing ball, you're not going to go anywhere. And this is where I think Palisades especially has been far more bipartisan, where you've seen Governor Whitmer and myself working on this. Jennifer Granholm at the time was the one that kind of kick-started this after Palisades had been turned down initially. So we're going to have to address this. Now, we also have to think more creatively. And this is where the Trump administration just made another announcement. There's 2 projects where they are funding $400 million into each one of these projects. for something called an SMR, small modular reactor. These are systems that are in the process of being developed, but these will be they're not going to be like portable or anything like that, but they are going to be much more prefabbed and much easier to construct and to maintain and to operate these smaller modular reactors, which are based on technology that our military has been using for a very long time. The idea is to co-locate some SMRs down in Palisades. Well, I've brought up, okay, well, where else do we need secure energy production? How about military bases? Okay? We already have perimeter security. They already are required to have a redundancy, if not their own completely independent energy system, so that if and when the grid goes down, our military bases aren't down also. So how about we start thinking about that, about getting some SMR technology into places like that to meet our needs. And oh, by the way, if you have an excess of energy, which you will with SMRs, guess what else you could co-locate there? A data center. All right? And we start putting these pieces together of the puzzle that then provides enough energy for our needs and for the future of the state and the country.
So we have time for one more question. As I mentioned, we're headed into an election year. Looking for you to look into your crystal ball and number one, tell us what you think the election results may be. Prognosticate. Will the Republicans continue to control both houses of Congress or not? And you also have a job review that happens every 2 years. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Thanks, everybody. Good to be with you. So look, midterms are historically tough, but there is precedence. We have seen where we've been able to maintain. Our majorities are very, very tight. So arguably, we've already seen a lot of that the sort of easy ones squeezed out of the system. And I do think that the Republicans in the House have the ability to maintain the majority. I think it's important. I think that they have an opportunity to increase the majority in the Senate. By the way, Michigan is going to be at the epicenter of that again. We've got another open Senate seat. We've got the governor's race, the Secretary of State, everybody at the state level, state House, state Senate, plus all of the congressionals and that Senate seat. I mean, we're going to be smack dab in the middle of it. For me personally, after having a lot of long conversations with Natalie and the family, we've decided that I am going to run again for this next election because I believe so strongly of what we are doing, the work that needs to happen, and that we are going to have an opportunity to continue to move this in the right direction, and I want to be a part of that. So that is my intention here as we're going into this next election cycle. Buckle up and hang on, folks. It's going to be a very, very interesting year, but I feel very good about where we're headed at this point. With lots of work to do, I just felt like it was the right thing for me to continue to try to utilize my experience, my skill set, my knowledge, and try to help make sure that this place is a better area to work, play, and live.
Thank you for that update. I'm going to ask Jody to come back up and wrap our morning up.
Thanks, everyone.
You know, the West Coast Chamber, that when we talk about advocacy, we say we do three things. That we advocate for a business-friendly environment, that we provide access to our elected officials, and we educate on important issues that affect our business community. Thank you, Congressman, and your entire team for helping us do exactly that. Today, will you join me in thanking the Congressman one more time? Thank you as well to Mike Hill. I can't imagine having to facilitate that myself. Your knowledge provides such great value to our members throughout this process. So thank you for always being a great partner through this. A couple of reminders before we end our time together. After the holidays, we'll be back together again for Wake Up, but we will be at Engedi Church for our annual economic forecast with Dr. Paul Isley. If you haven't already, please take a few moments to complete his survey. That really helps provide the data that we need to create a forecast that is hyper-local. So if you'll take time to complete that and then join us on January 13 for that program, that would be great. And with that, I'll say thank you so much for joining us today. Go make it a remarkable day. Thanks, everyone.